UK Cinema History, Episode 44, Kind Hearts and Coronets, 1949, directed by Robert Hamer, and starring Alec Guinness and Dennis Price.
There were then some 8 people between me and the dukedom, all seemingly equally out of reach. It is so difficult to make a neat job of killing people with whom one is not on friendly terms.
Hello and welcome to UK Cinema History. I'm your host, Eric Travner. This week we'll be doing Kind Hearts and Coronets, and I would like to announce we have a very special guest. That's right, Alec Guinness will be playing the role of myself, Highbender, Yazzie Sophie, and Fiona Powell. You're asking how he can do that when he's dead, and of course, Force Ghosts. Yazzie, I beat you to it. First Star Wars reference points to me. But I would like to point out that Kind Hearts and Coronets has been a very important film to me ever since I was a very young person. So this is going to be another one of those, like a Canterbury Tale, where if somebody doesn't like it, I'm going to go off on a what the hell is wrong with you rant, but I mean it with love. So we're going to start, we'll just go in PTR order. And hi, your opening thoughts on Kind Hearts and Coronets.
Well, I said last week when we were doing A Night to Remember that we're doing 2 in a row. And what I meant by that was we're doing 2 giants in film history. A Night to Remember is one of the greatest docu-films. This is one of the greatest comedies of all time. Not knocking other films we do, but these 2 films are in another category. This was actually rated number 6 in I'm trying to find where it is, that on some list of like greatest UK films of all time. It's just
sorry to interrupt, but yeah, that's the BFI Sight and Sound top 100 list that they took in 1999. So of the century.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, so it's just a phenomenally great film, and Eric referenced Alec Guinness, who one of the I think the best telegrams in film history was, why just 4? Why not 8? Because he was initially offered to play 4 of the roles in the film, 4 of the family members who get knocked off. And he read the script and he so loved it. He said, let me play all 8 of them. And in a sense, he played 9 of them because he also sat for a portrait of a family member that didn't appear in the flesh, but appeared in a painting. So, but, as lovely and wonderful as Alec Guinness's amazing accomplishment and the technical feat of having him appear in multiple characters at the same time, because the technology for that was not what it is nowadays. So I had to do some pretty clever tricks to do that. The Dennis Price's performance is just pitch perfect, and the writing of this movie is unbelievably great. You could be hard put to find many scripts of any era that are as well written as this script. It just wonderful piece of dialogue after another piece of dialogue, just amazing. So it's just it's one of the greatest films I ever expect to see. And I'm very excited that we're going to be covering it. I'll mention a few little bits of trivia. Also, this movie was the basis for the 2014 Broadway hit A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder. They're both based on a 1907 novel, Israel Rank, The Autobiography of a Criminal by Roy Horniman. Um, in the original novel, the sin of the main character's mother was that she married a Jew. And then he was shunned from the family by being half Jewish. And the filmmakers decided that that got too complicated in terms of the anti-Semitic aspects of it. The novel is supposed to be a satire and part of anti-Semitism, but if you've got somebody killing a bunch of people to get rich, um, it's the anti-Semitism arguably cuts both ways. So they decided that instead of a Jew, she married an Italian, and he's half Italian. And I think that actually does work. Excuse me. That actually does work better in terms of the tightrope the movie walks between a light touch and homicide. So I think I was a good choice on their part. Um, and it's called Kind Hearts and Coronets. Kind heart is a person who's generous, caring, sympathetic, and warm. A coronet is a small crown made of gold and jewels worn by nobles. So you have the aristocratic family um, who, disinherits one of their own just for marrying an Italian and is incredibly cruel to her. Not only do they cut her off from all funds, when she dies, this is the last straw for Dennis Price, is when she dies, they won't even bury her in the family plot. And and that's when he decides to start doing away with them. And we previously did The Ruling Class, which is about the class system in England. This is very much about that as well. I think it takes the ruling class to the next level in terms of a level of homicide, but it also, at the same time, has a much more deft comedic approach. So it's a far better film. But to be fair to the ruling class, it's one of the best comedies of all time. Period. I mean, it's hard for anything to compare to this movie. Um, and this was made at Ealing Studios. The credits for the screenplay are Robert Hamer, who is also the director, and John Dighton. Um, it's kind of hard to tell if it was any, unless Eric has done the research and knows for sure. It's kind of hard to tell who has worked doing what on any Ealing studio film, because they were a collective where we all helped each other on their projects. I know one filmmaker there said, I was credited for something that had almost nothing to do with, and another movie, I rewrote the entire script and I got no credit for it. So, but anyway, it's just, it's a miraculous accomplishment, this movie. It looks fantastic. And the performances are just breathtakingly good. Aside from Dennis Price and Alec Guinness, um, you have Joan Greenwood, who as Sibella, who just takes my breath away in terms of uh, how um, how strong and ruthless and sexy she is all at the same time. And the way she says her, she's a brilliant comedic actress. When she says lines like, "When pigs fly," it's, I can't think of anyone doing a better reading of that line than her. So I'm going to see if I can say anything other than gushing about how much I love this movie. Um, uh, I think I will. I would just say one other thing about Alec Guinness. Of course, his playing 8 roles is great in terms of marketing because it's this wonderful gimmick to make people go see the movie and to make it stand out from a crowd. And of course, he did a beautiful job with it. Obviously, it shows off his tremendous skills as an actor and a comedic actor, which we've had the pleasure of being exposed to through previous films of his, such as Last Holiday and Our Man in Havana. But it also works well in terms of walking the tightrope this movie does between a light touch and people being ruthlessly killed. Because in a sense, I mean, he is killing each of these characters, but the fact that each of the characters is being played by Alec Guinness, on some level, you can thinking, well, it's not real. I mean, it's not real anyway, but it adds an extra level of unreality to it, of playfulness and fantasy. So it's Alec Guinness not getting to play that character anymore, so he can go on to the next character. It gives it more of a fairy tale quality, which really works in terms of this delicate balance it maintains, which, by the way, is a really hard thing to do. Um, uh, to do a comedy about murder where you're rooting for the murderer throughout. It's a really hard thing to pull off, and it's just it's to me this movie is just a collection of small miracles that all work together to produce one of the greatest comedies of all time, and I would say one of the greatest films of all time.
Thanks, Hi. I'd also like to welcome Mark to the stage. Mark Redfield, we are honored to have you here.
Yay!
Many know him as a great voice actor and very active here on Clubhouse. Yazzie, if you don't mind, I'd like to go to Fiona next, just because I kind of set this up in
That's what I wanted to
up in
say.
advance.
I wanted to
And
say, let's
yeah,
start with Fiona and Mark,
and then I'll have Mark, and then you can bring us home. Fiona, before you give us your opinion on this film, which I know you've seen multiple times, because in an aborted version of us trying to do this podcast, what was it, like 2.5, 3 years? It was in the middle of the pandemic anyway. We ended up wasting about 20 minutes of precious Zoom time talking about our love of Ealing comedies, and all of which would have had to been edited out anyway. But can you talk a little bit about the locations? Because of course this was down in your neck of the woods there, in where you were raised in southern England, and also the why this had to be shot at Pinewood Studios and couldn't be shot at Ealing.
I probably can't talk on the studios. I'm not an expert on that, but I can certainly talk about the settings, which are all near Maidstone. Yes, I was educated outside Canterbury, and these are all settings quite close to Maidstone, which I think is about 20 miles from Canterbury, and absolutely gorgeous, of course, Kentish countryside. Otford, not Otford, Ottham, near Maidstone, is where the large farmhouse is, and that is a farm. That is a farm, or was still when I was a young girl. And most famously, the Gascoigne family, their seat, the castle, is Leeds Castle, which is very, very famous, a very, very well-known castle. Most people who go to England really ought to go and visit Leeds. It's absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous place. And the little pub is also in a village close to Maidstone. So absolutely lovely setting.
Which that pub was actually the place that the director got fired from Robert Hamer from School for Scoundrels, because he had part of his contract was that he wouldn't be drinking anymore, and he was caught drinking there, just in a weird coincidence.
Oh, interesting. May I mention that it was very interesting to me that Hi, is that how you pronounce your name?
Yes, it is.
Hi said that Sabella, the character of Sabella, I'm not talking about the actress Joan Greenwood, is an incredible actor, adored, absolutely adored. But her character is one who is gorgeous and lovely and sexy. That's a very male point of view. I think she's completely ghastly. And I think most women who love this film loathe her from about the second scene she's in. Really scheming, nasty little woman.
Can you believe they were going to do? They were going to cast Googie Withers for that role. I love Googie, but she would have been totally wrong. Joan Greenwood was so perfect for that.
Joan Greenwood plays these rather ghastly, sultry women who are, as my grandmother used to say, no better than they should be, brilliantly.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Googie Withers, and I wish there were more Googie Withers films. But I'm glad they couldn't land her for this one.
I am as well. Interestingly enough, also we're back. I know your very first episode that I participated in was on A Canterbury Tale. And of course, it's roughly the same setting. It's very close. We're very close to the villages where Powell and Pressburger set A Canterbury Tale. So you can do a complete little tour of film here in that just a small area in England, and not even have to stay the night, although I do recommend you do.
Fiona, before we move to Mark, Sela, and Yazzie, just over the many, many years you've had with this film and the many, many viewings that you've had, just the highlights of what is it about this film that brings you back to it to rewatch it again and again?
It is a perfect example of satire. It is a perfect example of very British satire. There are so many gentle laughs throughout the film. If I can remember, I'm no good at remembering lines from it, but if I can, and I didn't make notes on it, of course, but if I can remember when he shoots Agatha out of the sky, and he says, yes, do carry on, Eric.
I shot an arrow in the air. She fell to earth in Berkeley Square.
Berkeley Square, yes.
Thank you for correcting me, Fiona. You know how much I love that.
Don't you Berkeley at me. We'll have no Berkeleys here, thank you. But yeah, it's so witty. It's so gently witty. All of the characters that Alec Guinness plays are all individually wonderfully funny characters. And may I say, characters most of us have met. I mean, the ghastly little vicar showing him around the church is so typical of country vicars that we have met and dread. It's just a very witty film, witty and charming.
Thank you, Fiona, and we'll definitely get back to you because when the conversation gets back around. But I just did want to get some opening thoughts from everybody. Again, I'm going to have Yazzie kind of bring us home. Next is Mark Redfield. First of all, even though Fiona and I are great friends, I'm very honored that she joined us here today. But we're also honored to have you. And Sela Bloom, even though you're a part of this podcast as often as you can be, we're still honored to have you. It's just that we're honored to have you every week. Mark, you'd be next in PTR then. Your thoughts on Kind Hearts and Coronets, or if you've seen the film.
Oh, I've so much to unpack, so much to talk about. So let's just pick up from the vicar. Metabili I've actually borrowed that voice in the realtor in my audiobook of The Canterville Ghost. You Americans are very natural in your Metabili Land. Guinness is a favorite of mine, and his work in this is flawless. It's brilliant. This is one of my favorite films. It is one of the first films I owned on 16 millimeter. High. The only pushback I'll give is that I love the ruling class equally as well, and they are truly apples and oranges as much as they share, perhaps thematically in common, but they are so vastly different. I've seen this film numerous times. Accolades to all of the actors that we've talked about. Guinness certainly, Price, so calm. And, you were talking about the he's a serial killer. And yet the shock, the horror, and I suppose this is a spoiler for those who have not seen the film, but the very end, when he's left his diary /
We are not worried about spoilers on a 1949 film. Mark, film you are allowed to spoil everything you want. There's no such thing as spoiler.
But the bottom falling, the heart leaping into the throat when we realize that he has confessed everything, and then certainly will face the gallows for something that we've rooted him. And Miles Matheson, Dennis Price, certainly. I wanted to say his quietness in his performance is brilliant, and so much of that wit, it's nuanced. We've talked about Joan Greenwood. I definitely feel and understand both sides of this. I think I first registered Joan Greenwood in Mysterious Island, in the Charles Schneer Harryhausen Mysterious Island, and I think I saw that and registered her before I got that print in the late 70s of Kind Hearts. And just across the board, just so well cast. And I don't remember, there was a problem with the print that I had. There was a couple of things missing. I bought it used. It was not, I bought it from another collector. And there are, I believe, different running times for the British and the American versions. And I don't know a whole lot of background about it. As many times as I've seen it, I just love it unconditionally. It amuses me, and it is one of those films that I could just stop and watch anytime. So, marvelous film. So if you're listening and you've not seen this film, get thee to a streamer or a DVD retailer and get this film and put it in your collection.
Or watch it free on Internet Archive, because they're going through a lawsuit right now, and I want to send as much business their way as I can.
By the way, Eric, thank you for telling us about that resource last week. It's an amazing resource. I had no idea that they had films, let alone books and audiobooks. I had no idea. I thought they originally existed to preserve snapshots of the internet, just for historical purposes. But now they're a library. It's an amazing resource. Everyone should check out. What is it? Internet? What's the URL?
I believe it's.
I'll just put the link in the comments. But if you Google Internet Archive, it's the first thing. Internet Archive. It's the first thing that comes up. Sorry, Mark, didn't mean to interrupt.
Comments doesn't help for a podcast.
Good point. Anyway, well, now that we've gotten their free advertising, but they're a profit. They're a nonprofit resource. But yeah, Hi is right. They originally started as a PDF website, and they've expanded out. But now they're in trouble. They're being sued by all of the book publishers, so now I've taken up their cause. Anyway, moving on. Mark, did you have anything more before I move to Sila?
No, I'll just follow up really, really quickly with, yes, Internet Archives. I believe that's one of the places I found a good print of an experimental film that Bertolt Brecht made, which I needed to look at for research for something I'm writing. And this is really personally with my creative career, the influence of the 8 roles that Guinness plays in Kind Hearts. I do have a screenplay that one day I will make, and there's no reason for me to make it, but it's a bucket list thing. I am going to do a film of the Canterville Ghost, and the way we've been very, very, very true, I think, in adapting it, adapting Wild. However, I did create some of the other Sir Simon's family, and it's a bucket list project for me to play multiple roles. So I'm just going to leave it at that it has not just influenced my character voice work, but it's right up my sensibility with its wit and its satire, but it's also influenced a film version of Canterville Ghost that I am desperate to do before I hang it up. That's all I want to say. Happy to be here and love talking about movies with you guys.
Well, stick around, Mark, because we'll get back to you, because we always do. It's just the way this this works. Something always comes up. I did want to make a note when you talked about the different running times. I have 2 on VHS, so they're worthless, because if I were to put them into the tape machine, they would probably be getting eaten. 2 different running times. One is the American version, which is about 7 minutes shorter. Changed that awful word that they use for the eeny, meeny, miny, mo to sailors instead of the name of the dog in Dam Busters. Let's just put it that way.
Or if I can
the past was a horrible time, but anyway, go ahead, Mark.
Or if I can interject, the name of H.P. Lovecraft's cat. If you know, you know. So
there we go. That's all. That all needs to be said. Actually, I should have led with that one, Mark. Thank you. But anyway, and also has about a 10-second addition to the ending, because they felt like the ending was a little bit too ambiguous for Americans, and Americans, as we know, don't do ambiguity. Present company accepted. So they actually had his manuscript being discovered by the jailkeeper and the constable being called. For the ironic ending, just to bring home, and that was a Hays Code thing, because it was too ambiguous whether or not he's going to get punished for his crime. But those are the different running times of the film. But the scenes cut out of the American version, because I remember comparing them side by side, are mostly the fucking. Which so anytime you see them kissing or seducing each other, or a married woman visiting, those scenes were the ones that hit the cutting room floor. But you know what? What I learned is that if you take the fucking out of this film, it's still a fucking great film. So I'm actually kind of glad that version exists. And that wonderful chortle that you just heard was from Sela Bloom, who is next up in our PTR order. Sela, you just got to watch this last night, if I'm not mistaken, and your thoughts on it, because you're probably the freshest person with the closest memory of it of all of us.
Well, first of all, good evening or good afternoon to everyone. Second of all, my apologies for coming a little bit late, but I came late because you are wrong, because I did not watch it yesterday. I watched it today, and I just finished watching it. So it's very fresh in my memory. However, that allows me to confess that everybody on the stage and perhaps in the audience might know the film much better than I, because I find it quite complex, including some things that I find to be a kind of mistake, in my opinion. I know it's part of the satire, but I think, and we're also talking about 80 years ago, more or less, but I think that the the drilling down on the conflict of him being freed, but having documented what he did, um, he could have he could have. It was just a matter of 2 minutes to get the script. So I find that was kind of a not a very good solution the way they finished it. I like very much several aspects of the film. I like very much the closing, which I don't remember having seen such a situation ever before. Perhaps once I forgot it, but the situation where he comes out and not only from the self evidence of his wife, but also from the meanness of Sibylla, that he is confronted with the decision, do I go to her carriage or her carriage? I found that very interesting, the way they did it. I also found interesting that they are dealing with murder, but we never see any violence, except perhaps for the, I think it was the, was it the vicar? No, was it the vicar who was, no, it was somebody else who was poisoned, and he just, um, it looks like he just falls asleep in his chair, on his chair. But other than that, even when the last one who gets killed is
The vicar gets
the
poisoned. Lord Ethelred gets his head blown off, but it cuts away just as he does
yes,
it. So
well, that I was referring to the one who sleeps, who falls asleep, who basically dies on his chair. But other than that, I don't recall seeing any of them being killed in front of the camera. So I found that it's not unique, but I enjoyed that aspect. Even to the point that when the person who intrudes towards the end gets gets whipped, we don't even see that. We just hear the sounds of him being whipped. So it was a very interesting way of getting away from the violence for those days in 1940s. There was one other thing. I think I forgot it. The other point I wanted to bring, but I enjoyed the film quite a lot. I found that very interesting. This, for me, only the end situation um, makes it rounds up the satire um, aspect of it, because throughout the film I kept saying to myself, wait a minute, this is a comedy. At least I thought it was a comedy, and there was nothing that where I said, I was a little bit confused as to where is the humor coming in, where it's kind of odd the way they do it, the process of him deciding I need to kill these people, and it's very subtle. But I didn't find anything. Why do they call it humorous? Or and then that closing, I think it's what you get. Okay, this is the I wouldn't say the punchline, but this explains it. This brings the whole film to a very different level as a story. What I did forget that I just remembered is, um, Fiona mentioned this. I would slightly or gently disagree. It's not just men who view her, Sibylla, as sexy. I don't think she was sexy at all. I think she was very nasty from day one. And her cuteness is only there because she's a beast. She is actually not sexy and not cute. I found his wife elegant. Uh, I liked her a lot more. I mean, Sibylla looked cute, but I wouldn't say that she was. Anyway, I think you get what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Seal, I guess we just have different tastes. You know, some women like bad boys. A lot of men like bad girls. Sibylla is a very bad girl. Um, if you if you like strong, excuse me, if you like strong women who stand up for themselves and take what they want, those are sexy qualities. If you find those qualities appealing in a woman.
May I intervene?
Well,
I am a strong woman who always stands up for myself, but I'm never a nasty little beast. And I went to school with girls like Sibylla who are nasty little beasts. And they got away with it because of the weakness of certain men. And yes, she's ghastly. I'm so glad to hear that you found her ghastly, Sela. So glad.
I just want to underline what I see as a difference between how can I say that? Because I also, not that I'm contradicting anything or disagreeing with any of what I'm going to say now. It's not that I do like a very strong woman. I do like one that is that could be tricky, but objectively, I still separate what I find to be something and what I like in something. So when I see I hope I'm not going to be nasty now, but when I see a not attractive woman walking down the street with a very, um, with a strong lack of clothing, and she is a little bit more than fat, some men might find that sexy, but I don't think that one can call that sexy. For me, there's the difference between taste and my taste.
I think that's an excellent segue into the costuming details
Oh my God,
in this
yes.
film.
Well, the costumes are very
found,
over the top, don't you think, Fiona? I mean,
yes,
the hat that goes up so high. I mean, it's just wonderful.
The women's costumes are hopelessly inaccurate for the era, but you'll notice that Sibylla's costumes are always, although she's always completely covered up, nevertheless, she has, there's a hint that in a different age, she'd be one of those women who walked along the street showing a lot of flesh. The hats are ridiculous. And it's fascinating to see them do that, to sort of outline the characters through their costumes. Ironically, the closest to accurate female costume in this whole thing, I think, is Lady Agatha. I could see myself in that role, I have to say.
But anyway, moving on. Yazzie, first of all, take us home on opening reflections. No pressure, but, be brilliant.
No, first of all, we used to talk about the posters and the so many other things before. I don't know why we lost that very good tradition of ours. That why we're not talking about the posters anymore. So I think one of the things that is so beautiful about this movie is the poster of it. So if anyone wants to talk about that, I think that's a good point to something that we can talk about. And because we have the all 10 characters of Alec Guinness, that everyone keeps saying that it's 11, it's 8, but it's 10. It's the other one beside the posing for the family photos is the flashback is in what's his name? Ethelred's flashback dream. He plays his father. So anyway, these are the things that normally I don't care about. So I think something about this movie that I
Well,
really,
I'm
really
sorry. Isn't it Dennis Price who plays his father?
no. But if you think so, maybe it is. And then, one of the things that I really like about this movie is this, the determinism, the autonomy, the free will, all and because there are several underlining tones and storylines and subplots in the film. One of them, I think, it's this: who do you choose to marry with? And is love more important than any other thing? Than sexuality, than uh, you know, class, than money, than all that? And something that I think makes this movie satire, which I really don't want to go there and talk about it. Yeah, I have trauma about satire and comedy here. But the only thing that I just want to talk about, because that's the whole plot point of this movie, is that generally life is complex, life is dramatic, life is full of mysteries and questions. So I totally agree with Sila that it's hard to find comedy in this film, because with all these commentary and the subplots that I mentioned, so where is the comedy? And so the comedy in this film, I think, is in the narration form of it. It gives away the the plot. The confession makes all the takes the mystery away. I can put it this way: takes the mystery away and turns everything into a comedy, because it is as long as it is mystery, we can say it's a drama. But right now we are having, it's not it's a wonderful life of sort. It's a, it's a every reason that it's explained that why he is killing makes it funny every time. And yeah, so this was something that I thought that it was so important to talk about. This uncertainty that is all along makes it a dark comedy, not even a satire, because there's a difference between the satire. This is uh, the best example to explain myself in this is, like, maybe it sounds funny or irrelevant, but like Kramer in Seinfeld. That his character, the way that he is the way, the way that he treated he is on that series is just like Dennis Price here. That's why, no growing, no learning, hiding, and that's what it is. And the other thing that I thought is that, you know the terrifying points of life that is mentioned here, they all followed by this explanation of this so-called serial killer. So the way that he explains it kind of remind me of something. And I wanted to say that I really wanted to hear everyone's talking about this film, because everybody said that, David Fincher's Killer is not a good movie. It's dull. It's boring. And I was keep telling everyone
You
that, have
snuck
you
it in on
seen?
me, didn't you, Yazzie?
Yeah, yeah. I said, yeah. I just wanted to say, isn't it great to see Obi-Wan Kenobi? The only one who can pull off 10 characters is Obi-Wan Kenobi. I also wanted to sneak the Star Wars up to. So anyway, yeah. So because in that movie also, if we want to consider this as a noirish, uh, you know, serial killer type of movie, I think that's the same thing that happens in David Fincher's Killer. he also explains everything. He also has a mantra that he's keep repeating. He is also, so how come that's what I'm trying to say? Because the, do not treat though we can't treat them differently because they're following the same, structure. So going to the, I'm not gonna talk about the N word, not talking about just like Mark said, let's say H.P. Lovecraft and leave it there. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna talk if it was a different day, maybe. So I just go back again to that, the thing that I mentioned at the beginning, that the determinism and free will and autonomy, because I think that, in this film, the class and social position that it kind of this is a movie about how we create serial killers, why we have these serial killers. Yes, some of them have psychological reasons, but sometimes society, these these people that just came back from war, and when they were at war, they were fighting for the same country, women and men, every color, every religion, they were all fighting for the motherland, for the, Mother England, and but now that they're back, so you have to, pay, you are concerned about what to call a man who is at the death row because of killing someone else. All these social positions comes to play. Or the thing that made me really laugh actually at the beginning was, and this viewing, was that when they were reciting the 10 commandments, and I said, oh, okay, yeah, teach them 10 commandments and the social killers come out at the end of this class. So yeah, tying it to today's politics. So the tie, are we I don't know if we want to talk about why the name of the film is uh oh yeah, so sorry, I digress. So the, this choice, Louise's choice, this her man Louis Mancini's mother, her choice. And then he also, look, it's the, I really like the way that it says we all have choices, the choices have butterfly effects. This guy saw what his mother's choice, how his mother's choice affect his life, and how forgetful, the psychology of, you give someone power and then what they would do to it with it, how quickly we forget that where we were. And then now he is putting these two women and is going to choose between them. But just because I always kind of defend this femme fatale kind of characters in film noirs, I kind of put it here too. I say these women are the caricatures of aristocracy, just like men. There is no difference. There is no emphasis on, you know, whether they're women or men. But just like what Fiona said, it's men's choice, it's men's view, it's men's gaze to give them this position. And that's what happens most of the, this scheming kind of character, the way that you should always be in the position of defending yourself, of scheming, of being in defense, never let your guards down, all that. And but there is a difference between these two women. One of them is not from the one that everybody like are more leaning into, more driven into, is the one that is not from the aristocracy. So that is the other things. A lot of symbolism, moral ambiguity, and yeah, I go back to what Hai was saying, that Sila was saying that he couldn't find the humor in it, and I think that it's the complex female characters, complex human characters, and what is so brilliant about the script is all these layers and moral ambiguities. And yes, we want this man to win, But then at the end, it drops a few bombs, you know, racially and misogynistically and all that, all these moral ambiguity of our protagonist, of our anti-hero of sort, creates all these dark themes. And the visual style is the other thing. The narrative technique is the other thing. The dark comedy and how it's differentiated from the satire in this film. The character interactions, the blending of genres. There's so many things that we can talk about. But if you want to talk about where does the name of the film comes from, I think Eric, I think you have something to tell us about that. Like so
Yeah,
I give it to you.
Tennyson's poem. I put it in the comments, but since we record this for a podcast, that does our. But the line from the poem, Clara Vere de Vere, trust me, Clara Vere de Vere, from yon blue heavens above us bent, the gardener Adam and his wife smile at the claims of long descent. Howe'er it be, it seems to me, 'tis noble. It is only noble to be good. Kind hearts are more than coronets, and simple faith than Norman blood.
For a moment,
Please.
because a lot to unpack there. But first of all, I agree with you, Joan Greenwood. The poster. We haven't talked about the poster. One of the fascinating things about several of the posters is the fact that it's a family tree, and he's Dennis Price is either standing there with an axe or a gun, a
If you
shotgun.
refresh your browser,
And
it's my PTR right now.
oh, there it is. There's one of them. There it is. That's great with his back to us there. Humor is so subjective. I find Kind Hearts to be very funny, and there is this anti-hero. The phrase, the term serial killer has come up, and I can't think of a film that sort of does this, except for two, about 20 odd years later. And I enjoy these two other films I'm going to mention in conversation because they're immensely entertaining, but they are not quite on the level of Kind Hearts and Coronets. One is Theater of Blood with Vincent Price and Diana Rigg. And the similarity there, and I'll just leave it at this, is again, it's a ruling class social thing. In Theater of Blood, Price is a Shakespearean actor who is seeking his revenge by murdering a circle of critics. There, the comparison sort of ends. There are other similarities, but not for right now. The second one is right on its heels and also a Vincent Price movie. Well, this is an American produced thing, The Abominable Dr. Phibes. This becomes also personal for the revenge. Phibes is a musician who is horribly. You've all seen the poster. Love means never having to say you're ugly, which is the play on Love Story. Because of the death of his wife, and who is the object of his ire and his a team of surgeons. So there's a kind of ruling class there between the death of his wife and the team of surgeons. And I find these very interesting. I can't think of other films of the period, and I know it's 1950 or 49 to early 70s. Uh, that popped into my mind, Yasi, when you were talking about Fincher's The Killer. So anyway, and moral ambiguity and why we're rooting for an anti-hero, so to speak. So those are the only things I wanted to sort of respond to. Wonderful stuff.
Oh,
Oh,
one
Mark,
of the things that I wanted to say was that why? So why the casting? Why there is Alec Guinness in 10 or 8 or whatever are in how many characters? What that remind me of, again, Mark, just like what you were saying, it's not a movie from the era, but it's an American 80 movie. It's Heathers. I thought that because these people of that aristocratic class treats the other people, look at the other people as you all are all the same and you are all below us. one of the things that makes our anti-hero kind of likable and we root for him, just like, the Melville's samurai, those type of hitmen, is that he kind of holds up a mirror against them. It says, now I treat you all the same. And I think the very fascinating thing about acting, it's like, just like in Colonel Blimp that we talked about before in here, he used to see all the women, like one woman played the three lovers of his, because for him every woman was like his first love. And here, all these people in that class, in that family, are, to the eye of Luis Mancini, are the same. So that's why we have one actor playing all those characters, just like Heather's.
How very, very millennial of you, Yazzie, to bring Heathers in. Hi, you had something?
Yeah, I wanted to. First of all, this is one of the greatest comedies of all time. It is hilarious throughout. If it didn't hit you that way, so be it. But that's not subjective. That's an objective fact. This is an absolutely incredibly funny comedy throughout. And Mark, when you're talking about Vincent Price movies, which I love, um, but one of the interesting differences is that in this movie, Dennis Price, oh, they're both Price, I just realized. Dennis Price isn't trying to buck the system. He's not trying to change the ruling classes. He's just trying to get to change his caste assignment so he can be with all the people he's killing. So it's a fascinating tightrope because we're rooting for him on some level to kill these people because they deserve it, because they're so cold and uncaring of everybody who isn't part of their family and who is poorer than they are. I mean, they're really unlikable people. But he's not trying to change them. He's not trying to change the system that created them. He wants to join it. And so that is part of the, so, it's a satire. It absolutely is a satire. It's as well as a dark comedy. It's both. It's a satire on the class system, but it's also a satire on the people who who want to join the class system. It's a satire on our hero as well. It's a deliciously complex film, and the reason I'm saying it's better than Ruling Class, I'll put it different. I mean, it is, but to put it more clearly, it's better at its comedy than Ruling Class because the first half of Ruling Class is essentially comedy, and the way the director was not that adept at comedy. So when someone would do like the equivalent of a punchline, he would take the camera and zoom in on the person's face to emphasize, "Hey, this is where you're supposed to laugh, guys." It didn't understand the subtleties of comedy. It didn't understand how comedy works ideally in a film. The real power of Ruling Class is in the second half when it goes dark, when it goes dramatic, because he understood how to do dramatic, but not as well on the comedy part. So whereas this film, the people doing it, everybody involved, understood comedy to an exquisite level. So that's why I'm saying, I mean, I think it's overall a better film also, but it handles comedy better.
And I appreciate that so much, but this is also the Ruling Class is also at a time of Richard Lester, of zooms. I don't think we've seen more zooms in motion pictures than between like 1966 and 1972. And by the way, just for the fun facts, Dennis Price is in Theater of Blood, by the way. He's one of the critics. And Theater of Blood is closer to where the analogy I was groping for revenge against a ruling class, when it's this actor who is trying to take out these very vicious critics who have set up to say very mean things about Edward Lionheart and, by extension, his daughter, who's so behind him. But anyway, I just wanted to point out quickly that Dennis Price. So in Theater of Blood, you have a pulp version, not nearly as brilliant as Kind Hearts and Coronets, but you get two prices for the price of one.
All right, I want
That's
everybody to mark this
brilliant.
down. 607, July 4th, 2024. I'm going to agree with High Bender. Maybe the first time in the history of this podcast. I think Peter Medic came very close to ruining the ruling class with his directorial style, and I think what makes this film laugh out loud funny. So unfortunately, I'm going to gang up on Sela as well. Is the work of Robert Hamer. It is, man traps, and the way that they set it up, and having Lord Ethelred caught in his own man trap is not only intrinsically funny, but the way they set it up is hilarious. And then he does when he's talking to when Price is talking to Edith, to Valerie Hobson, and you see just the tiny little puffs of smoke coming from behind, and he realizes that particular version of the Guinness character, whose name I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but wasn't even going to pursue his dukedom, that he just wanted to win some photo contest, and it's just, too late, poof, and the way that shot is framed, that's just laugh out loud hilarious. And and where the humor isn't is in the narration. And I think that's great, because it sets that contrast that Medic never had for ruling class, which turned out to be a very good movie. I really enjoyed it. If you listen back on the room, and to me, it was one of the few films where I can say, I really kind of thought it was pretty badly directed. As Mark pointed out, it uses a lot of the trendy zoom. You've got the zoom when they're talking about the rose bush, and I kept asking myself, why are they zooming in on the rose bush? What's going on with the rose bush? You don't have that here. This is a better made film, I think. But it is just the shot selection is intrinsically funny when they're dancing around the room. It's intrinsically funny. But the other thing that is intrinsically funny, and we hinted at that when we were talking about where the title comes from, is this just absolute love of language that this film has. The first thing I was taught in film school is voiceover narration is a cheat. Get rid of it. Don't use it. Show, don't tell, which I think is ridiculous, because there are as many ways to tell a story as there are stories to tell. But this is a film where you actually see the character doing something, and you have somebody narrating it. And what is intrinsically funny in the way they set it up is his deadpan narration of the hilarious shit that he's doing, and the way he mails him the caviar, and how just intrinsically funny. And of course, this is while a general is going off about the atrocities that he committed during the Boer War. So just to make sure you don't have any sympathy for him, so that you can laugh, and then the explosion, which probably killed several innocent bystanders, turtle. But it is very, very funny, and it is laugh out loud funny. But I do get where Sela is coming from, because the humor is so incredibly dark that you absolutely needed the light touch of a Robert Hamer, who we've talked about him before. We talked, briefly in our Ealing room about It Always Rains on Sunday, which is considered the kind of proto version of the kitchen sink dramas I love so much, even though I don't believe it is. And of course we talked about his great contribution for the Googie Withers section on Dead of Night, the mirror section of Dead of Night. He is capable of very dark, dramatic filmmaking, but the touch on this film is incredibly light, and I think that's why it turned out to be a classic. And I don't like to get too much into the trivia, but when we did our history of Ealing comedy room, one of the things that we talked about was the producer Michael Balcone and how much Balcone was able to create, as Hai said, that the sense of sharing ideas and the creative enterprise of Ealing Studios. And so you had Charles Crichton actually working on other people's films, doing the B-roll for him while he was also making his own films. That's why they were able to produce in 1949 three of the great comedies of all time. This one, Tight Little Island, it was called in the United States, but it was actually Whiskey Galore. And I'm going to be careful in saying this because it will be a test for my pop filter, but Passport to Pimlico, so we don't get too many pops. Three of the.
Just wanted to conclude this thought because I think it's important, at least for me, and I would like to hear some of your perspectives on it, as people who have seen it more than me and know a lot more about film than me. So there's one thing that I found very interesting. I said several months ago, and that continues to be my perspective. To laugh, one must be above it or outside of it. And that's, I say, with the example of when you're in the middle of something, you might be scared or sad or hurt, in pain, but once you remember it, then you find it funny, but you don't laugh at that moment. So I was I think in terms of comedy, in terms of humor, in order to laugh, the person who's listening must have a detachment to what's being portrayed as comedy. If one is not detached from it, one cannot laugh. I think this is a little bit complex, and I cannot really explain it, and probably nobody agrees with me, but that's just my thought. So I was very heavily into the title, and especially when Edith, I think is her name, when she recites the poem or part of the poem from Lemison, and she says, "Kind hearts are more than coronets." So that's very different to the title. And she also says, in terms of talking about society, classicism, they think too much of the rights of nobility and not enough of their duties. So there was, for me, from the beginning, there was a lot of essence of really serious things that they were trying to bring out, especially through his wife, Edith, if that's her name correctly. So I was being carried throughout the film with this seriousness, even though I did not understand the whole thing, what the seriousness was about. But I
Sila,
was, yes,
may I jump in?
uh, yeah.
It's fascinating to me what you're saying, and I think this is very much a cultural thing, and I think this could be a disconnect for me, having been raised in Britain and recognizing all of these characters, very much recognizing all of these characters. And not only did I get some of the in jokes, which may have gone, which may not have resonated with people of other cultures, Americans, particularly Americans, but also it's very much the British way to find humor in your own disaster. And I'll share a personal story, if I may. I was in a very serious car accident a couple of years ago, and my British friends completely understood, and some of my American friends, like Eric, completely understood why I found my disastrous situation very funny. And daily incidents that were happening to me whilst I was in hospital and in recovery, I found those hilarious. I was raised to find those funny. And in that way,
I thought it was the drugs, Fiona. I just thought it was the drugs. But
actually, I'm British. I refused most of the drugs, which was a huge problem. But thank you. I'll do drugs recreationally, not to try and survive. And that was a joke, by the way.
We don't judge here. This is UK cinema history. This isn't.
This is what I mean by cultural difference.
But Eric, let me interject. If you could explain Fiona's joke to this American after we're finished, that would be great. That was a joke too.
As Winston Churchill once said, America and England are two countries separated by a common language.
Exactly right. So, Sela, it's fascinating to hear what you say, but this film being a British film, a British audience would find this very funny and would understand why it was funny in the middle of his pain, why that was funny. And the other thing that the British audience would completely understand is we are constantly told that Louis, Dennis Price, is a stand-up human being because of things like he refuses to be involved in blood sports, which is hilarious considering he's just killing people left, right, and center. But harm an animal, that's disgusting. Whip somebody who is working class, that's, below par. It's disgusting. So these little jokes are, I understand, very cultural. But it was interesting to hear your perspective on that, which had never occurred to me.
Well, the perspective that I brought has, in my opinion, and by the way, I agree with everything you said. I understand very well that these cultural differences make for that understanding or not understanding. But I actually think in the German language. I grew up speaking Spanish, so I'm very familiar with the differences, and I love Monty Python and Black Books and Hugh Laurie and a lot of this British dark stuff. But personally, this point that I was making about being detached from it, I think that goes beyond culture. I think that goes into what is too close to you as a person, what is far enough to be funny to you as a person.
And that's a fair point, Sela, because of course, you do see, he blows a guy's brains out, and I chortle about the fact that we're probably innocent bystanders, but one of the language jokes that I love so much in this is when he sends the couple over the river, he says that when he's also killing the girl that his victim is with, that she'd suffered a fate worse than death the night before, which was also Edwardian slang for losing your virginity. So it had, it was a double entendre in two ways. Neither way good, neither way sexist. And I can, so I can see that. I can see that you could see this, and if you ever read the novel, don't. Number one, it's not very good, but it really comes off more as kind of an Eric Ambler type spy story. It really gets into the details of how he commits the murders and things like that, which the screenplay really just glosses over, And
Eric, are you saying you read the novel?
Oh yeah.
You are Superman. I never stop being amazed by the level of research you put into. That's astonishing to me that you read the novel. God bless you.
I'll just add real quick without going too deep about the nature of comedy, because that's something that's fascinated me. So for anybody listening, Walter Carr's book, Comedy and Tragedy, I highly recommend it. He was a theater critic primarily, but he's got a wonderful book on the nature of comedy and tragedy, and literally starts with discussing the similarities of the masks and following certain points that we've talked about. It does come from pain. And I have to just quote this,
Yes,
and then
yes.
Eric move along. But I do want to quote Groucho Marx because I love this. An amateur thinks it's really funny if you dress a man up as an old lady, put him in a wheelchair, and give the wheelchair a push that sends it spinning down a slope toward a stone wall. For a pro, it's got to be a real old lady.
That's great. I'll quote Mel Brooks, who said, comedy is when you're walking and there's a banana peel and you slip and you fall and you crack your head and you have to go to the hospital. That's funny. Tragedy is when I get a paper cut. So there's that as well. Also mention how what one of the things that this movie and the Vincent Price movies have in common. I want to say again, 2 prizes for the price of 1. Absolutely brilliant, genius. Thank you for that, Mark. I'll remember that for a long time. But the Bugs Bunny method of comedy is first the other guy has to do something really awful to you, really egregious. You're minding your own business. You're in your hole, your rabbit hole, eating your carrot, maybe watching TV, and somebody comes along and tries to kill you or tries to destroy your home. And at that point, you realize, of course, this means war. And at that point, you are justified to do every fucking sadistic thing that the human mind or rabbit mind is capable of conceiving. So we love Bugs Bunny and we root for Bugs Bunny because he never starts a fight. It's always the other guy who starts it and justifies then every horrific thing that Bugs Bunny does. And in this movie, that family justifies Dennis Price's actions, and in the Vincent Price movies, there is justification for it. So in both cases, we are given permission to root for the killer, and that's a really critical thing to understand if you're going to do a comedy about someone and doing unsympathetic things. Put them in a position where the other party is not necessarily worse, but have in some way earned the horrible fate, earned some kind of horrible fate, even if it's not up to the level of murder. That's I think a critical part of the comedy formula that's at work here.
Which nicely goes into one of the points that I normally don't make notes for these rooms, but I made this note once I had seen that Fiona Powell had RSVP'd because Fiona is a proud product of the English public school system. And if anyone wants to find a wonderful reflection from her on her time in a public school, look up a podcast that she co-hosts called The Things That Made England with Royfield Brown, David Crowther, and Luke Baxter, and she has a wonderful remembrance of that. But
you're very dear, but may I say I'm not a proud product. We toterated it. We don't show pride in it.
I was making air quotes when I said that. But here's the question.
We survived
I'm going to
it.
start with you, Fiona. Yes. Yes, yeah. Unlike those kids in If, who we all agreed in our two If episodes probably didn't make it. But here's a question for you, Fiona. What is this movie actually saying about class? And before you answer, because I really want to put this into a perspective from an American point of view. I think there's a little bit of a teasing, that the fact that the idiot nephew is put into the clergy, the admiral going down with the ship, the Boer War general, and what have you. But Dennis Price is not taking revenge on a class. He is attempting to enter it.
Well, because he could do it so much better. I mean, to us, Dennis Price is the quintessential gentleman's gentleman. For many, many years, he played as Jeeves in the P.G. Wodehouse adaptations of the Bertie Wooster character on British television. He's the absolute epitome of the upper middle class person who gets it right, whereas the aristocrats don't know what they're doing. They're a bunch of blithering idiots. They're either blowing up people in the Boer War, or they're blowing up, they're damaging people and breaking laws on their country estates. Or they're going down with the ship. I love the scene where he's going down with the ship. That's so funny. And because he can't tell his port from his starboard, silly man.
And too stubborn to say that he was wrong.
Exactly.
Did you know that was based on a true story?
I did not, but I wouldn't be in the least bit surprised. I've probably met lots of people like that. But that whole class system where the aristocrats are a joke, really. They're just too silly for words, and yet they're there.
And
by that we don't include royalty; they're darlings. But
yeah, this was open. I was opening it with Fiona, but yeah, this is. I want everybody to go around and kind of give their reflection on what this was saying. So go ahead.
Well, I have to represent the Americans in the room. I don't think,
especially today.
Yeah. See, I don't.
Happy Traitors Day, everybody.
You're welcome.
Fiona and Yazzie both live in Pennsylvania, for God's sakes. So, and Hi and Sela live in New York. So, matter of fact, I think the closest thing we have to someone from England in here is you, Mark, because you've been there more recently, I think, than any of us.
Oh, I'm simply the ghost in the machine. I'm everywhere all at once. But I don't think that the themes and the messaging are all that lost on Americans. It's interesting because, as Fiona's saying, the Gascoigne family is parts indifferent, clueless, idiotic. We're handed,
probably inbred, which is why they all look alike.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. In other words, they were handed that power. They did not. The American myth of pull yourself up by your bootstraps and make it happen. I because in the history of just talking about cinema, just talking about the movies, Americans have had a love-hate relationship with the rich. There are periods where the rich are celebrated. There are periods where the rich are completely torn down and made fun of and ridiculed. Hi, this is bringing back a memory just the other day. Maybe we talked about the fact that in 1931 in Chaplin's City Lights, the millionaire doesn't remember the tramp when he's sober, but loves him when he's drunk. That is a sign to me of in the American, with the worldwide depression, with the encroachment of World War, of where we were in 1930. And you can find this throughout the decades in film, but mostly, the rich are seen much the same way. They were handed it. They are clueless. They are indifferent to us, all of us, and that's what makes us align ourselves with the Manzinis or the Little Tramps, maybe. Oh, that sounded so highfalutin. Put that on the back of the book.
That was good. That was good, Mark. Especially in your voice, you know. But we are very lucky because, of course, we have Fiona's beautiful voice and Mark's and highs here. So my stuttering and stammering is going to sound even worse this episode, which is great. Which is great because it turns out, according to Spotify's analytics, that's what people love most about me. Which I actually know I hate that.
I have a question. So now that everybody here apparently loves trivia and stuff, so who played, that's the best way to put it, who played the most characters? One actor, most characters in one movie. Just, you can tell the guess, you can tell the number.
The suspense is killing me, Yazzie, because it's going to be some Bollywood movie or something, because the chances of it being anything outside of India seem to me almost zero, since they have like up to 26 people being played by the same person in their movies.
Give me a number. Like, what is the highest number you think one actor can play?
Well, I happen to know of a Bollywood movie where one actor plays 26 roles, so I'm going to go with one more than that and say 27.
27-1. 27-2. Like, what is your guess, everybody? What do you? 27 is a good guess.
I can't. I'm lost at sea. I have no.
Rip the Band-Aid off. The suspense is killing us.
Yes.
It's someone by the name of Johnson, based on the Guinness World Records. It's Johnson George, who played Aranu Ninja in 2017. 45. It is funny as it sounds.
Was that an Indian production by any chance?
No. It you know, the guy, it's funny as it sounds. It is a British production. And I think what I wanted to say was that it seems like British, like since the Shakespeare, they had this thing to man dress as women, like men, like, yeah. But it's something about Alec Guinness's character really fascinates me, is that because in the book, if Eric, you remember, in the book, we have a character that he could play, that he had to like wear a brown face, but he rejected that. He said, no, I don't want to play that one. So kudos to Alec Guinness for always being ahead of his time. And the other thing is that all this ambiguity that I think from the adaptation from the novel and all that, it's, Eric, you were absolutely right. It's all Robert Hamer. He put his, humor style and comedic style on the film. Because the source material, the book, is, the characters, it's a more psychological depth dive into this, what happens to you if you have been deprived of something, not just
well, and the way they changed the ending, because the ending of the novel was rather it was convoluted, number one, because it was another mistress who committed suicide, leaving a note saying that she had committed the murder that he had been convicted of, which, number one, was just too convoluted for a film like this, and number two, how the fuck do you make that funny? And the answer is you just
going
don't.
back to what Mark and Fiona were saying, also Sila, was that to me, like suddenly, like in the middle of the movie, especially when we get to the trial, I suddenly thought that, suddenly this movie is not that British to me anymore. It has like some kind of French sense. Mark, you mentioned the gallows. I can also say the leopard man. Jacques Turreau's movie. In that movie also, our main character, in a very dramatic situation, he suddenly, like at the end, he finds joy in the fact that, in his isolation of sort, and in all the dilemmas that he's facing, he finds joy, comedy. And yeah, I think that's the part of this movie that it's kind of international. And exactly the ending, Eric, you were right. That one of the things that I think this movie, the script about this movie is so amazing, is that at the beginning we think we know why. That's a very good comedic point. We think that why we know why he is in jail, but then as the movie goes forward, we figure out, oh, even like everything was even fooling us as the audience. We are the miserable, foolish
Well,
ones.
Yazzie, I want to get back to your point about the multiple characters being played by the same actor, because, of course, now we've all seen that great classic British film, Penny Points Paradise, right? Oh, no?
Yes,
Nobody?
yes.
Really? No, Fiona has seen it, I'm sure. In which Peter Sellers plays multiple roles, and of course that became Peter Sellers' go-to. Fiona, you had some connection to that film, didn't you? Slight.
Yes, Eric, trust you to bring that up. My mother played the one of the young women. The dark-haired woman is my mother, and she actually got that role for Peter. Peter was a good friend of hers, and she already knew Harry Seacombe and Spike Milligan, but books tell you that Peter Sellers met them at a theatre, but actually it was my mother, I believe, who introduced them, because she already knew Harry Seacombe, was good friends with Harry Seacombe to the end of his life.
And I want to point out it's 1951, so this is 6 years before the Goons. So your mother actually helped form the Goons. Just saying.
Yes, they called her a goon girl.
But all joking aside, of course, nobody's seen Penny Points to Paradise, but it's a 1951 film.
And my mother said it was the dreadful film,
yeah,
and she and Peter agreed it was a horrible, horrible film. She never wanted anybody to see it.
But it's free on YouTube, and very historically important, because of course that was the first time the Goons came together, and we don't talk enough about the Goons on UK cinema history, because they really only had the one Richard Lester film, which I can't even remember. It's the something standing falling film. I can't remember the name of it. But anywho,
I got a few for you. So, but part of the question is, what do you consider? How are you going to define character? If someone does a brief cameo for like 5 seconds, does that count? Assuming it does. So
if they're a good enough actor, I mean, there are some actors who can do a 2-minute cameo and steal an entire scene.
Well, so here I asked Claude, the AI, and what it said, it came up with Peter Sellers in The Mouse That Roared. Sellers portrays 3 main characters, but he's credited with playing up to 10 minor roles, bringing his total to 13. Warwick Davis in Leprechaun, Back to the Hood. While primarily known for playing the Leprechaun, Davis reportedly played 11 different characters, though many were brief cameos. And then Priyanka, that's a 2003 film. Mouse That Roared is 1959. And Priyanka Chopra in What's Your Rashi, 2009. In this Bollywood film, Chopra played 12 different characters, each representing a different zodiac sign. So that's the report from Claude AI.
Now Fiona has to go, so I wanted to get her final thoughts, but I also want to point out to the haters who every time Hi does this send me the emails about AI. We here at UK Cinema History have completely and totally embraced our future robot overlords, and may God have mercy on your souls if you have not. So please just keep your emails to your goddamn self. Fiona, I understand that you have to leave, but before you go, leave us with some words of wisdom
It's this
about
little thing
kind of
called the
hearts and
4th
corn.
of July that Americans are very keen on. And as I live in Pennsylvania, I need to go and do something. And I'm not voting in the election. And by the way, it looks like Labour has won by a landslide, but never mind. Which I'm very pleased about, but never mind. Anyway, yes, so those are the reasons, because it's the 4th of July. So you want some last minute words of wisdom? I don't do
Yeah,
words
but
of wisdom.
now be brief, because I know you're in a hurry, but also brilliant, no pressure.
I have no words of wisdom. It's a funny film. I think one of the funniest lines is one of the first lines when the hangman talks about, and the hangman is based on a I'm sure on the real hangman at the time, who was a masterful hangman, we are told, who's sort of looking in the prison door and weighing up Dennis Price's size. And he says it's going to be a huge privilege to be able to hang someone with a silken rope rather than hemp. And I think, as ghastly as it is, that made me laugh. Right.
Let me just interject, because I have not formulated the joke yet. But again today in the conversation, I've wanted to somehow talk about a sequel to Kind Hearts and Coronets where Manzini does a Peter Cushing from The Revenge of Frankenstein and survives the execution. But I can't quite formulate it yet. Thank you again for trying to get me there. Uh, that was a complete waste of time. Sorry that I brought that up.
Not at all. And I shall say goodbye. A very happy 4th of July.
Thank you for coming,
to those of you
Fiona.
who are in
We
America.
appreciate any minute, every minute that we get with you, as you well know.
And do watch Penny Points to Paradise if you want to see my mother scene stealing, which she does all the time. She was absolutely brilliant. Her name was Vicky Page, and she was a scene stealer par excellence. And with that, I shall say goodbye.
Thank you very much, Fiona, and we hope to see you again for future rooms. We always love. I always love having you, and of course we this is your second time here. But yes,
thank you. You're very kind. It's usually an inconvenient time of day, but thank you. You're very kind. I shall do it whenever I can.
I would like to go back to the historical references. So, we start with, of course, the fact that it's Lord Ethelred, who, of course, Ethelred Unred was notoriously the worst king of England in history, beating out even King John in most polls.
That wasn't his fault. Bye-bye.
Of course not, Fiona. Yes. But there's also that the dukedom was given by Charles the Second as a favor during his exile, and then it was passed on through the millennial through the wife's line because of favors done during his regency. And then, of course, it shows a picture of a very buxom young woman, which is a reference to Charles II's habit of regularly fucking his barons' wives, which is why he's second only to Henry I in the number of illegitimate children that he sired. And the film is just filled with all of these. And those are the two that I just remembered. So there are a lot of cool little historical references. And one more thing, I want to point out that Miles Malleson, who plays the executioner, one of my favorite British actors. He usually gets to play, the drunk or what have you. But of course, we've talked about him in Dead of Night. He is, of course, the room for just one more, sir. Person who drives the hearse, and absolutely love him. Just wonderful casting for this film.
It's a
Mark,
great
can we
point.
say, Mark, can we say like why Peter Cushing's Dr. Frankenstein refused to attend the premiere of Kind Hearts and Coronets? That can be the premise of your joke.
That's great. Oh, by the way, the running, jumping, standing still film.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Because we don't have access to anything where I could have looked that up and saved myself that.
I
There was just no way we would have ever known.
but it was I couldn't get in, and I couldn't wedge, and just that's me being a super fan of Peter Sellers as an actor. So
And we'll be covering Richard Lester later, of course. Hard Day's Night, which was Yazzy's pick. That was good. That was originally supposed to be her birthday present, but we couldn't quite work it into the schedule. Which, by the way, Fiona and Yazzie both had birthdays last week, so happy birthday to both of you.
Thank you. I said there is no UK cinema without Beatles, so we have to do that. That's why.
I'm just glad you didn't make us do Help, because if I had to see that movie one more fucking time, I was just going to scream. But anyway, I'm glad we picked the right one. I am going to start. We've gone longer than the film can. So I am going to start rounding this room up. Doesn't mean I'm trying to close us. So if you've got something where it opens up another conversation, I'm willing. But I am just going to start going around, and I'm going to actually give Mark the final word on this because we don't get him very often. Other than that, we're just going to go into in PTR order, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the schedule. So we'll start with Yazzie and your final thoughts on Kind Hearts and Coronet.
I seriously, I think I said everything that I wanted to say there. I like, I don't know, I the female characters, they're they're so complex. There a lot to them. They play a very crucial role in the narrative. So I appreciate that for a 1949 movie. And this they Sibella, she kind of embodied this femme fatale archetype. This she's manipulative, she's self-serving, but she's the smartest. She's the only one who figures out that that this guy, this Luis Mancini, can be. She said there is only one person that can benefits from all these killings and all the death, and it's you. So just like the femme fatales and noir movies, I think this they didn't value this virtuous, compassionate, moral, Sibella character. They kind of give us this. We kind of empathize with Sibella more. We like her more. She's more, not just again, because this movie is a commentary of class. The female character that we like more is because she got the more sex appeal and she's smart and witty, not the one from the class appeal. So that's something about the female characters that I always want to talk about, and the depth of it, and the layer, and the complexity, and the innuendos that bring that comedy this type of comedy can bring to the script. And the what else, that all this psychological complex in every single character, and in castings, in the female characters, in our main anti-hero, and at the same time our Louis has this charming sophistication to him. And I think this is like Dennis Price. To me, Dennis Price did I mean, the weight of the movie is on him, not on Alec Guinness. Yes, what Alec Guinness did was very impressive. We see it. No other person. This movie could not be remade because we know Peter Sellers tried it. They said that, I don't know, Robin Williams, Dustin Hoffman. There were so many people who tried to take this role, but they couldn't. First of all, because of all this, again, all these undertones and everything, I don't think that we can remake it today. But for Alec Guinness did that, something that no one else could pull off. But the weight of the film is on Dennis Price. His face, when they're sitting at the dinner table with the Duke, and he starts talking about women as breeders. 5 seconds before that, he's saying that, oh, this man was charming. I'm so sorry that I have to kill him. And then he opens his mouth, starts talking about that Maud, the other women character that he was going to marry. And he said, oh, yeah. She's a good breeder. That's what all the women are. We want to say that Louis Mancini, he had like agendas. He wanted to pick between these two women because of how they look. He's so shallow, blah blah. But his face at that moment, that side eye, that was the comedic moment of an actor to me. And that was, to me, that was 10 times more precious than everything else. That all the things that Alec Guinness said. I know that this comparison is stupid. So I just want to talk about one line in the film that I really liked. Two scenes. One, another comic scene to me was when the reporter is trying to read his poem to Louise and says, my dear friend, and it says, oh, pardon me, your highness. And that was the moment that I chuckled. And there was this very genius line in the film before he goes to the photographer Henry. He says that, yeah, I find this very mysterious camera and try to learn things from that. And I figured that this camera demands a little more than ordinary intelligence. So I tried to learn more about it and study about it. And I found this ability to judge the subject upside down very fascinating. And I think that this line in the film describes the whole movie.
Thank you, Yazzie. We always appreciate you. If you have anything to plug it, and where can people find you online?
Box, as a matter of fact, UK Cinema has a letterbox that we're kind of expanding and adding a bit of reviews to our movies, a kind of summary of everything that we talk about in the room. So if you go to my letterbox under the list, I'm going to put it in the chat under the UK Cinema list. You can find all that. If sometimes you don't have time to listen to our podcast, you can go and read there. It's not a complete, text or transcript, but I try to put a summary of what we talk about on every movie, and it's still under construction, but yeah, it's there. If you want to contact me, find me on Twitter at Sufi Yassi. Thank you.
X, formerly known as Twitter. Hi, Bender. Your final thoughts on Kind Hearts and Coronets, and then the spiel, your pluggables, and where people can find you.
Thank you. First of all, Yassi, kudos for reading the book as well. I am just blown away that you and Eric both read the book. I bow to both of you in going above and beyond what was needed.
By the way, I found it on Internet Archive. Just saying.
Amazing. That is so great to know. That is truly an amazing resource. I really appreciate you sharing that. And everyone listening, go to internetarchives.org. They got books, they got movies. I think they've got audiobooks. So, yeah, amazing. I wanted to mention that, ironically, Alec Guinness almost died twice during the shooting of his film. So while he was playing characters who were being killed, he almost got killed playing those characters. First of all, in the scene where the Admiral goes down with his sinking ship, which, by the way, adding to the irony, it's perfect that we did this when, the week before we did Night to Remember, which is about the Titanic. But yeah, the scene where he's going down, Guinness was held down by wires while the set filled up with water. Once the scene wrapped, the crew started to leave, forgetting that he was still underwater. One of the techs suddenly realized they'd forgotten to release him, and he dove into the water with some wire cutters and freed Guinness from drowning. Fortunately, Guinness took great pride in his ability to hold his breath for long periods of time. So that was one brush with death. And then Agatha, in the hot air balloon, um, Guinness questioned the safety of that. He asked if the producers were well insured for the hot air balloon. They said he shouldn't worry about it. They were insured for £10,000 sterling. Guinness said he didn't think that was enough. He declared if a balloon couldn't be raised more than 15 feet unless they raised the insurance to £50,000 sterling. Ealing Studios was renowned for being penny pinching, and it refused his demand, pointing out he'd be accompanied in the balloon by a well-qualified Belgian balloonist hidden in the basket. Guinness was undeterred in his refusal to perform a stunt, so the scene in the finished movie is not him, but the Belgian balloonist wearing Agatha's dress and wig. And as it happens, a high wind pulled the balloon off course, and the balloonist was found 50 miles away, having had to jump into a river. So, again, um, two near-death experiences on a film, all about death. God bless Alec Guinness for his lungs and for his acumen in knowing when a stunt is not as safe as it should be. Alec Guinness described director-writer Robert Hamer as, quote, a man who looked and sounded like an endearing but scornful frog. And that was said with much affection. Hamer and Guinness got along extremely well, and they formed a friendship that lasted for many years afterwards. And Guinness said in his 1985 memoir, Blessings in Disguise, Robert and I spoke the same language and laughed at the same things. He was finely tuned, full of wicked glee, and was marvelous to actors, appreciative and encouraging. And I think that comes through in this miracle of a movie.
Your pluggables and where people can find you online. Hi.
Oh, I forgot. My name is Hy Bender. I am a New York Times bestselling author and ghostwriter. If you need help doing a book or a movie or developing a TV series, please feel encouraged to reach out to me. My book site is bookproposal.net, bookproposal one word.net, and my script site is hy, as in yellow, hyonyourscript.com. And thank you, Eric. Thank you for choosing the film. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity for us to discuss films. And thank you, Mark, for being an extra special guest this episode. And thanks to Fiona. We're grateful for both of them being visitors. Always thanks to Eric, Yasi, and Sela for being regulars, and Kathy for being kind enough to be in the audience from the beginning all the way to the bitter end of this episode.
And Michelle and Saran as well. The audience is just as important, as these rooms are much harder if we don't have people to talk to. Sela, first of all, I have an apology to make to you. Back in our Brazil episode, when you mentioned Ingmar Bergman's birthday, I joked that the chances were that we would not still be doing these rooms by the time Ingmar Bergman's birthday came about, which just shows how much faith I had in this particular room. And yet here we are. It is July, and so of course I was wrong and you were right. Celia, your final thoughts on Kind Hearts and Coronets, and also if someone wanted to celebrate Ingmar Bergman's birthday by watching the film Face to Face, which I did find on Internet Archives, by the way, it is available there with almost readable subtitles. Where could they do so?
Yes, it's only 10 more days, and Bergman's birthday will be upon us again. So thank you very much again for the
to point out that your room on Clubhouse, Ciscus Organicus will be hosting that room, correct?
Yes, correct. So to the film, I really enjoyed it. I wanted to mention one or two aspects that I found relevant. I hope I don't forget the second one. The first one being, I enjoyed the, I would say, cycle that it's closed when Louis refers to his mother as, in her marriage, as the thing that is helping him make decisions in terms of why and who do you marry. And on that point, I wanted to mention also that I don't think it's only a film addressing the classes, but at the same time, for me, there was from the beginning, I also got a very strong sense of a very personal motor in Louis that comes from his relationship and his experiences with his mother. So many of the things he's doing might have to do with his desire to move up in the world, in his class. But I found it had a lot to do with the relationship he had with his mother and his fate in terms of who he's going to go out with at the end. And I was very busy with this thought based on his mother's picture, who he was going to choose. But then I got interrupted by the fact that he had to go back in to get his script or to get lynched. And yeah, in terms of Bergman, yes, on the 14th is his birthday again. I think 1918 he was born. And it was the suggestion months ago from Yasi to choose Face to Face. It's, no, I'm going to be quiet because otherwise some people might complain. So we're going to be discussing mainly Face to Face. I need to add some things to that. I cannot really celebrate just one of his films. I think he's too great to celebrate just one. So I'm still thinking about which other films we might watch, but most likely towards the second half of the month or maybe a longer period of time. So that's it for me. Thank you.
And where can people find you online?
SelaBlume.life. That's my main source of my main place to put the things I'm thinking about, photographs, thoughts, whatever, and also I usually post the person that has been celebrated on that day on their birthday, be it a philosopher, a composer, whoever that might be. I usually post some of them on their birthday. Thank you.
And also some wonderful artwork, by the way, Sila. And
Question
also,
from Sila. What Sila? Why the movie doesn't use a lot of music? Why do you think, in your opinion, and for everybody in the room?
Are you talking about Kind Hearts?
This one, yeah, Kind Hearts.
I found that I think towards the first third of the film, I noticed that I was a little bit surprised because in my, as you most of you know, my experience in cinema is not very deep. I don't remember too many films from this time, 40s, 50s, that stayed away from music as much as this film did, and that surprised me a lot. I cannot. I don't know
yeah,
if I'm not.
they have the magic flute, but that's it really. And you have the one live scene with her, when you have the flashback to his father singing, and those are the only two uses of music throughout the whole
Yes,
film.
yes, correct. And the because I saw the film just before we started the room, or finished it while we were in the room, or you were in the room. There are a couple of things I forgot, including that I thought that was really horrendous singing from his father. I'm happy for Louis that his father died early because this guy could not sing. And I forgot something else that I wanted to mention. Yeah, no, that's it. Oh, in terms of music, I think Face to Face is going to be a very, very good thing if we go into the acoustics or the sound sphere of the film from Bergman. I think it's a very, very interesting film when it comes to the sound concept.
Yeah, can I say, like, Eric, Mark, help me here, because in Ealing's, especially, if when we see like a murder scene or something like that, they always use that their famous
Yes, yes.
music, kind of, see, so it's kind of
Yeah, but here it would have been gilding the lily. There's just so much going on in the frame that the music would have just been too much.
Well, that's another
That's
thing I just remembered. Before I forget it again, I really would like to hear even one statement from this because I mentioned it at the beginning, and it's really in my head. And I think I'm going to watch this movie again for many reasons. The title, besides the fact that the poem says it very differently, it's a very different meaning in the poem than in the title. What is there anybody who can say something about how does this kindness or kind is used as a title when we're dealing with this film? Because it's not that I don't see it. I'm just curious as to how some of you might have seen where is the title in the film.
You doubt our
How
Chat GPT overlord's analysis of this? Heretic? No. Here's
know.
where
I don't know what to
I
say to
looked at
that.
it. The Kind Hearts and Coronets is ironic to me. The idea that the Kind Hearts is the line that gets stressed is simple faith or Norman blood, and that is to say that who you are as a person means more than how you were born as a person, and it's
Okay,
as simple.
okay,
It's
that
as
makes a lot
simple
of
as
sense.
that. It's not.
Yes.
It's not a deep or complex use of that particular poem. It is as simple as just because your father was Italian, you know. So he's the Kind Hearts, and the Coronets are the English
Okay.
aristocracy. That was
Okay,
my interpretation.
that makes a lot of sense. Okay, thank you.
And we're going to give the final words to Mark Redfield, and then end it, Mark, again with anything that you'd like to plug and where people can find you on the internet.
Well, wonderful room. If you've not seen Kind Hearts and Coronets, go see it. Do yourself a favor. Yasi, happy birthday. Eric, hi. Sela, always good to listen and talk movies with you guys. And in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, you can find me and all the shenanigans I'm up to at markredfieldstudios.com. And I guess the newest shenanigan is a novella, a little thing, a fiction I wrote that stars the silent actor Lon Chaney. It's called The Chaney Murder Case. And obviously, I'd love you to buy it. I mean, am I stupid? And in absolute conclusion, the only thing I can think of on this day that means so much to us as both Brits and Yanks of Amity Island when he said, "And these beaches will remain open." Thank you.
I can't think of a better way to end. So we will end on that. So let's talk a little bit about the schedule. So next week, we are going to be discussing The Wicker Man, which is considered the, and I quote, Citizen Kane of horror films. Yes, we are talking about the 1973 film with Christopher Lee and Ingrid Pitt's boobs. Well, in descending order of importance to that film. And then I did want to end the room with something Hai wanted me to begin doing, which is kind of discussing where I'm going to go forward with films after the ones that we've scheduled. And
No, what about the other thing that I want you to do?
Well, no, you're supposed to always remind me because I always forget. Hi, where is this film available on the internet?
It's on Amazon Prime. You can find The Wicker Man on Amazon Prime. And by the way, you can also find the remake with Nicolas Cage. They are both on Amazon Prime. If you want to compare and contrast, feel free, but please watch the original. That's the one we'll be talking about. Christopher Lee.
The bees.
Christopher Lee gives a wonderful performance, unlike Hound of Baskervilles.
Thank you, Hi. Yassi, go ahead.
Put a link, and I put a link of Mark's interview with Gary D. Rhodes. It's amazing. It's about vampires in silent cinema. I put the link in the chat. Please watch that. That is a masterclass, free on YouTube. I can't tell you how many times I watched it, how many times I use the references here and there, Mark, and that interview is priceless. Watch that too.
Go ahead, Mark.
You mean it's priceless? You mean it's not worth anything? No.
It's
Not
on
worth
you.
at all.
It's on YouTube, so you won't get paid for it. Is what she meant,
You
Mark.
don't have to pay for it.
Oh my God, Yasi, bless you and thank you and thank you. Gary's been a friend for a long time. He's a novelist. He's a filmmaker. He's a teacher of film and things. And his passion, he's written many books, biographies of Bela Lugosi. He loves cinema and silent cinema. He just came out with this book in January. And so it was high time to talk about that. And it's an audio only interview. However, for YouTube, my editor I sent a bunch of photographs, so there is a visual anchor to a lot of it when we're talking about certain things, including the more obscure things in tracing the vampire cinema. And the fascinating thing to me, by way of preview, is language, and it's the gap in what we understood the vampire to be, from Stoker to the Vamp, Theda Bara and the It Girl and silent cinema, and then really Nosferatu in 1922, which is on everybody's lips because of Robert Eggers' upcoming third telling of the story. So thank you, Yasi. Bless you, bless you, bless you.
Which, by the way, note to our podcast and Facebook listeners, this is going to be going up a day late because I'm going to have to edit out not only heavy breathing and having an orgasm, I'm also going to have to edit into all of the episode descriptions about 12 different links. So look for all those links on Facebook and in the episode descriptions there on Spotify and Apple.
Well, Eric, I so apologize. I just get so excited about the movies and Kind Hearts and Coronets that it's the blood pressure goes up in a good
Well, Mark, we didn't ban you this time. But anyway, all joking aside. But this is something Hai wanted me to start doing because I have to start looking at the scheduling out for August and early September, which is to kind of give you an idea of what I'm thinking. We don't have answers today. This is just what I'm thinking, and then give people maybe research a little bit and come back with opinions next week after Wicker Man. But a couple of things I wanted to start doing. I wanted to get a Mike Lee film. And hang on a moment, somebody is rubbing their engine. I'm really sorry that he has such a small penis that he has to rub an engine that you can hear it in my apartment. But anyway, I want to get in a Mike Lee film. My thoughts are toward starting with one of his more accessible ones, which would be Life is Sweet. I also wanted to get Peter Greenaway for the first time into the podcast because of his connection to Derek Jarman when we were talking about Caravaggio. And we all know what my choice of Peter Greenaway film is going to be because of my love of Shakespeare. It's going to be Prospero's books. It's going to be John Gielgud as Prospero in his adaptation of The Tempest. However, I am open to suggestions. I want to schedule a Peter Greenaway film. However, also very hard to find some of them. So keep that in mind. So, like, if your idea is, we shouldn't we do Draftman's Contract first? Good luck finding that unless you want to pay $200 for it on eBay. But so keep that in mind. Whereas Prospero's books actually free on YouTube right now for some reason, but it is a bit more accessible. And then third, and this one I'm going to kind of leave open and up. I want to do another Ken Loach film because there is an almost 30-year gap between Kess and when he started redoing his films. I'm open to suggestions on this one. Daniel Blake is a very easy one to access, but My Name is Joe, I think, which is a film that I unfortunately pretty much anyone would have to pay for unless they've got BFI, is a better film. And dropping these hints again. This was a high suggestion before I start making out the schedule, but that's my thought process going forward. But in between. Next week, we will be discussing The Wicker Man, which not only considered the, and I quote, Citizen Kane of horror films, but also the film that saved the British film industry when it was at its rock bottom. Also, a lot of really interesting music in that film. It's more of a folk musical than it is a horror film, and a lot of boobs. Like, more boobs than you're going to get in a Cinemax late night show.
Be careful.
Yeah, because I have a question. Is it true that Michael Balkan, speaking of heavy breathing and boobs, is it true that when the first viewing of the movie, Michael Balkan, the producer, he said that we're not going to be able to sell this movie to Americans because of this Joan Greenwood. She represents all things feline. And she doesn't, why she speaks like that? She doesn't speak, she purrs. Speaking of cats and all that.
Well, I had never doubted that story until you just asked me whether it was true or not. But I had always assumed it was just true. But if it isn't true, it should be. How's that? Anyway, unless anybody... Oh, go ahead, Yezi.
Amen. No, I just said amen to that.
And if you want to come after me with your woke mob, I am at ETROMMATER on X, the artist formerly known as Twitter, or use the voice back channel here at Clubhouse, or I don't even have to tell you to do this because because people are doing it all the time now. But you can contact me through our Spotify page. You'll notice that I did not actually bring up any of the mailings that I got. If you're listening to this episode, despite your promise never to listen to us again, you know what? That's because that's what I thought of what you had to say. Other than that, I think it's time we ended this room, and I'm going to do so in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you, everybody, and we hope to see you next week for The Wicker Man. Thank you again for listening to UK Cinema History. If you want to join the conversation, follow the link in the episode description. Every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we record these episodes live on the Clubhouse app. Hope to see you there. And while you're listening, please rate us and review us on your favorite podcaster. It would be doing us a great favor. And thanks again.